Right, let's go. Mr. Mohi, stop showing off to the other boys. Sit down. Over 2.5 days. Okay, righto. I think considering the interest in it, excuse me, we might go straight to the rail discussion while it's still fresh in everyone's mind, which is on page 39. Right. Probably one of the bigger decisions we have in front of us, so let's get that one done.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment on the staff report, just on a couple of matters of fact, if you like?
Ask some questions, yeah, sure. Clarify.
Firstly, on page 41, it said substantial sums are committed to be spent by central government on State Highway 35, which is north of Gisborne, and State Highway 2. Well, the minister or the ministers have said that they needed to pay attention to State Highway 35, which is falling to pieces under heavy truck use, and they need to retain the viability of State Highway 2. I've been in touch constantly with NZTA on this, and they advised me that there has been no advice or direction from government in terms of any additional funding. Now, it may well come in the next couple of months, pre-election, but again, NZTA has to have its projects prioritised through the Regional Land Transport Committee and its processes. So that statement is not really correct.
Is erroneous. Where would that statement? Who?
Mr. Chairman, I take it that Councillor Dick's 41. It's a quote. It's a quote from the report.
From this report.
I just took some paragraphs that I felt summarised their positioning, rather than for councillors to be faced with the whole 40 or 50 page report. But they are direct quotes from the report.
Which report is that?
The Economic Potential Report that's just been commissioned by
the East Coast Regional Economic
by
Potential
MB.
Report.
Well, can I make a point in regard to that? And it was said by one of the submitters today that the report's rubbish. Well, I wouldn't write it off quite that badly, but it has a fatal flaw, an absolutely fatal flaw, and that is it's essentially dismissive of rail, and it took absolutely no account whatsoever of the major shift of road freight heading south from road to rail after Kiwi Rail lowered the bed of 3 tunnels to enable rail to carry fully loaded 40-foot containers. And what happened then was that Steve Weatherall basically got his major clients like Deliberations and the other big pack houses up there to load the containers in the packing shed. He takes them straight down to rail, and they come straight down to Napier. They go on the ship, and they're away. And there were very, very significant tonnages put on rail at that time, but unfortunately, a few months after that commenced, then the washouts occurred, and so it had to be discontinued. But as I say, that report is fatally flawed in the sense that it takes no account of that major shift of freight that was going on and would have continued through into the future if it hadn't have been for the washout.
Okay. Can we... you had another point in the staff commentary? Because to be fair to Mr. Drury, I mean, he's taken this out of the report, so
yeah,
it's not something he's
I'm not
made up.
criticising anyone. Yeah. I'm just trying to make some corrections.
Okay. So...
Could I ask something? And normally normally we would have a report back with recommendations from the Regional Transport Committee. Just where and how united are the Regional Transport Committee on supporting this proposal, given that I think one of their members, is Cynthia Barr still on that? No. Oh, okay, right.
Tanya Kerr.
Tanya's
and we have two, chair and deputy.
So no, I was just thinking if it was Cynthia, she was going around trying to get people to sign that when we were over at their joint meeting. She was approaching people to sign the petition for a feasibility study for, which I told was inappropriate when we were considering the submissions. But where does the Regional Transport Committee sit on this proposal?
The RTC has been unanimous for years, or for the past few years, since the question of rail has been paramount and it's been a threat. Unanimous that that rail should be supported to provide modal choice and pricing competition, and to deal with the fact that State Highway 2 is a difficult route. That's been their position and hasn't changed.
Okay, Councillor Graham.
So I'll just give my own personal view here. I hear the arguments on rail. I understand the issues around increased production. I think Gisborne has huge potential for increased production. I think Wairoa has even huger, quite phenomenal potential. I understand some of the economic plans that are pretty hard now for Wairoa and around the dairy industry. A friend of mine has, if rail was there, has a plan. He would put a grain drying plant in Wairoa. So there's obviously a huge amount of economic development going to occur up that coast. I'm not disappointed that we only gave these guys 10 minutes because we couldn't do anything else. But what I would propose, I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to hear their argument, and I'd like them to personally convince me that the rail is the way forward. The cycle trail, perhaps we should give them more opportunity as well. But we need to make a call on this one way or t'other, and I think we need more time to do it.
This is your speech after you've moved 1 and 2, actually.
Yeah, it is. I thought we were having a general discussion on. Well,
let's try and get back to a few basic questions. But I think we could resolve this in the debate actually once it was moved and seconded. And the wording as it's here pretty much does it for both opportunities actually.
Well, with respect,
Mr. Chairman, I had my light on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's continue through some questions. But did you have a question? Let's go. Yeah.
This has been discussed as Napier to Gisborne, and I'm wondering where the funding commitment's coming from Gisborne and what discussions have been held.
Commitments for
this proposal.
This proposal is
Napier Gisborne Rail. I mean, we're talking about a 5.3. Well, what else?
We're just talking about our piece, which is condition precedent, which is one of our new council words or phrases, on others contributing, including the Crown.
That doesn't answer my question. There's been a whole lot of discussion.
It does, because at the moment we're talking about indicative allocation of funding of $5.5 million, which will not happen unless others come on stream, including Gisborne District Council potentially.
Well, that's what I want to hear. Gisborne. I mean, they should be half of it.
No. Because
and that's where this whole thing. I'm with Rex. A whole lot of this, we've had information denied to us. I would have welcomed the chance to have heard more and just asked those guys some questions. But I find it very fruitless, us asking them one-on-one. The value is in hearing what they've all got to say. So,
the regional council boundary runs up into the Whareroatas. It's not very far away from Gisborne. And the interest, the Hawke's Bay interest in Gisborne is that it is a major source of product, in particular containerised freight, if you've got rail for Napier Port to expand its catchment and its volumes.
To be helpful to Councillor Hewitt, I mean, the resolution as it sits here, we're retaining in principle the investment, and we're talking about indicative allocation, what we're doing is leaving the door open to a future discussion, which would be far more in depth before we got anywhere near committing to signing a cheque on this. So that, let's be clear on that. That's the recommendation as it sits here in our papers. It's up to us to decide what we do. But there's no way in the world I would support spending $5.5 million today, signing a cheque and handing it over to someone, because all the other pieces aren't in the puzzle. So, just to be very clear, this is a continuation of the journey, if you like.
Can I perhaps put it into some context as well? One of the things that councils always have to do is to, when there's a possibility that they may make a financial contribution or investment in something, is to consult with the public. So the mechanism that's often used is to go through do that via an annual plan or a long-term plan, whatever the timing might be. That very often doesn't necessarily mean that the decision's made at this point in time. All it means is that the council has signalled to the community that they're thinking about the possibility of making an investment, that they're therefore going to make some provision for that, but it does not commit the council to that. So it's really then the business case has to be proven. So if I give another example, the solar hot water scheme, which we've had financial provision in our plans since our long-term plan 2 years ago, but we've never spent a cent because the business case hasn't come to council. But we went out and consulted. If there's a satisfactory business case, would the ratepayers be happy if we spent some money on this? And the message came back quite clearly, yes. But it still has to meet the other hurdles. So this, I think, is very much that situation as well, councillors, that if this proposal or any other, this proposal meets a number of criteria at some point down the line and satisfies you all, then the funding, you've already made provision for the funding and you've been out and you've consulted with the public. So you've done that. If it doesn't, the provision then just disappears. It's not needed, I should say, rather than disappeared. It's just not needed. So that's really the why you get probably a number of things in here from time to time through this process that you think we don't have enough information, and that's just because it's an idea. Sometimes it's a little bit more than an idea, but not much more than that. And it's something that you want to test with the ratepayers and that you want to make financial provision for should it stack up at some point in the future.
And we've seen a range of issues demonstrated and expressed, mainly today, over whether we should be part of this or not and what direction we should take as a council. So there is some discussion to be had, but can we just have some questions? I think we could just about deal with this in a debate, actually, but Councillor Scott.
Question around the consultative process, Mr Chairman, that should the recommendation as stands in the upper part of that page, and the government do not return the line fit for purpose, which means further expense of business of either becoming the owner or the lessee and operator of the actual line with all the maintenance, that would require a further consultation, would it not, either through the long-term plan or special consultative process?
Well, yes, if it's going to cost more than $5.5 million, which inevitably it would, then yes, you'd have to, I think, undertake another consultation process with a lot more of the known information.
And the set of conditions change, so obviously it doesn't work. Councillor Barker.
My question is, what would be the process we would need to go through to take this matter from out of the hands directly of this council and put it into our investment company, and task them with the duty of seeing how this could work, setting out what our commitment is. We're looking at $5 million, what some parameters are, and say with them and the other investments we have here, like the Port of Napier, could this work in a commercial, semi-commercial model? and then come back to us with a report.
Short answer, that could be a recommendation today.
Right.
Yes, so it's just it would require a resolution of council. Informally, you'd probably want to have a chat with them about it beforehand, or you may not, but it would actually just be a formal resolution of council.
I have a dog and bark itself.
Councillor Bevan.
And if we were going to do what Councillor Barker is suggesting, could we get them to examine at the same time the feasibility of the cycle track as an alternative investment?
Probably as an alternative investment. Yeah.
I think
My thinking is that as we stand at the moment, we're suggesting, I think it's $5.5 million. It's highly unlikely at this point in time that that's going to be the limit to which we'd need to invest, because we're not going to get a rail, let's be honest, we're not going to get a rail under the current regime delivered back to us in usable condition, which means we're going to have to spend a whole lot more to get it to that point. Sure. So if we're going to get somebody to look at the feasibility of a $5.5 million, or alternatively an $8.5 or $10 million, then why wouldn't you at the same time get them to look at the alternative uses of that line?
The challenge I see with that is the Hawke's Bay Regional Investment Company wasn't set up to look at the best use of the corridor, which is what I keep coming back to. But they can look at rail, nuts and bolts, volumes, challenges, etc., digest all the information and say, would we recommend to you as a council that you would invest in this?
But it seems with the down.
To the region. To the region, they certainly don't have a business case or business plan that returns money to someone who puts the money in to do the development. Certainly with the ownership structures at the moment, and that is the challenge. I mean, it's not our bit of dirt.
The submissions have been for the regional council to support this study into best future use, and I think that's where it should rest at this point. And certainly the business case for Napier-Gisborne Rail has got to go in front of HBRC at some stage, but I think it's just a little premature. There's still some, if you like, some political manoeuvring that needs to be done, and the regional council is the right body to do that.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Councillor Dick's position on that. I'll explain to my colleagues later why. And also thanks, Liz, for that very good explanation, that clarified thing to me. I'd like to move the 1 and 2 as they stand, given that clarification. Well,
on page 42.
It's either and. It will be either and.
It's either
And or.
Which is what I've done, so.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest a simplification of the second one? That it simply says support a feasibility study into the best future use of the Napier-Gisborne rail corridor. Remove all those references to the reports that are underway, because the report's not underway, they've done, finished.
Just a challenge in that, and we're getting a little bit messy here, but a challenge in that is we're not actually asking anyone to do it, we're supporting it. Are you suggesting we do the work and pay for it? We need to be quite explicit in that, I think.
Tremaine's saying he's going to get money out of government.
Well, that's what we should be saying here.
But I think we should do it. You don't want government to.
I'd change support then to participate.
Yep.
Support means somebody might come along and say, well, support is going to put some money in. I'm not putting money in. Participate? Yes. No cost.
Isn't the Chris Tremaine proposal, though, just to look at it as a cycleway, not just the overall
Yeah, they're
use
not looking at the overall best use of the corridor. We on behalf of the region, it's ridiculous if we just look at it as a cycleway, either rail or a cycleway. Let's look at every opportunity, possibility.
Agreed, but from their perspective, they're wanting to back up their proposal for a cycleway. That's what isn't that what they've gone to government for?
I've no idea. I'm not a signatory on any whatever they've done. Let's get this back to what's in front of us. Are you happy to second?
Well, I'd like clarification around it. Don't care whether you say support or participate. It either is putting money up or it is quite clearly not putting money up. Putting money up at this stage, I understand, and I'd like clarification from the staff, comes onto impact on rates. Is that right?
The third point, which would cover that, is there's no change to the annual plan.
Which would be number 3.
Which means there's no cost.
You happy with 1, 2, perhaps take some of the jargon stuff out that's actually not relevant, and 3, no change to the annual plan.
The nuance of it, what I'm trying to achieve is that it's on the table, we're signalling that we are still involved in this, and we're signalling that we may come back and ask for capital to do something here. But that's only a signal.
So that's you as the mover. You happy to second that, Councillor Scott? Is that what I heard? No.
I'm sorry, the changing all the time. What?
It's on the board.
Yeah, I'll put it up here to see if that's what into the cycle way.
Yes.
My learned councillor said he's going to explain why his presentation putting the decision to go to HBRC was wrong, and we're just waiting here for bated breath for the revelation.
And it is on its way, but we need a seconder. We need some clarity in what we're talking about. That can be one. That can be, and no change to the annual plan, which means we're not indicating we're going to spend any money on any feasibility study. You're happy to second that, Councillor Graham? It's all yours.
I already made my speech, but I just want to endorse that. I think the railway could be something quite sensational, given the economic development that's going to happen on the East Coast. I need to be convinced in the financial viability. I need more time with those gentlemen that were here today. I thought they were very credible. They obviously knew their business, and I would like the opportunity to spend some more time with them. So, and I guess I'd like a more wider, like a morning put aside, so that we can actually sit down with experts on both sides, have people like Jim Scotland in the room as well from the port, and we can all hear it and all make a independent, get our thinking correct. And I'm happy for the HBRC guys to be along, but a broad discussion, a morning session. This is a huge thing that we're going to say yay or nay to. So I need to know more, and I'm sure some of my colleagues around the table would. That's my position.
When would you want to do that, Councillor?
Just order, Councillor. Seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to second the proposal as stated there, because it keeps the door open to further investigate. Up to now, the signs have actually been very negative in the way of putting obstacles in the way of this operating, but it still keeps the door open until every last alternative is considered. I think that we heard from a range of submitters on this, and I noted how many of them were outside the region. And it's not up for people outside the region to tell the region how to spend its money. However, I will say this, that every one of those submissions was independently written and not pro forma, and each of them added a bit of knowledge to the case. So I think they were very valuable submissions. Whether they were for or against, they raised a variety of issues for us to consider. And I think this does keep the door open for a number of possibilities, especially to find out what is the best use of that corridor in the future. If it's rail, we haven't turned our back on it. Don't cross that bridge until that bridge is really left swinging in the air. Let's keep considering that. And there's a certain amount of emotion in this around the environmental benefits of it, which, as one submitter pointed out, actually are quite suspect given the likely impact, the age of the locomotives that will be on the road, etc. That really in the finish, it will come down to a business case. Will it stack up? Will it be a good investment of the region's money? And will it actually return something for that investment? Because I doubt very much going out into the future whether the ratepayers be happy to be continually subsidising a service from which there aren't any real benefits. So the door's open. The case has to come back to us. It's not a case of just wanting to have a whole morning or this or that or anything else. It says quite clearly here that we get a revised proposal, a full business case. It's evaluated and peer reviewed. So it will be given the spotlight, exactly the same level of spotlight that we're giving other major investments. And I think that's the proper way of doing it.
Thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Belvin.
I would like to know more, though, about what the next step envisioned is here. With my reading of this is that it doesn't. Are we signaling by these two provisions that we effectively have turned our back on the cycleway option? No. If we haven't, then I do think some people may think it's symbolic. I don't, to put number 21 on top of number 20 and say we are in fact seriously interested in what might be the best use of the corridor. It may not be 20. It may be something else. We haven't even referenced any something else. So if I were one of the submitters regarding interested in the cycle trail, I would read this as saying, well, we've done a pro forma nod toward a multi-purpose feasibility thing, but what we're really saying here is that we want to get a case to build a railroad. Is that what we intend to be saying, is my question, really.
We're in debate, but just because so many new councillors, could you just explain, Madam Chief Executive, what the next step is from here? We actually have to take this back to a full council meeting at the end of the month and adopt the annual plan, correct?
Correct. So once you've adopted the annual plan at the end of June, and all the submitters are advised of your decisions, then it's really up to the staff to, I guess, engage with the various stakeholders around this whole topic. With reference to both, and there could be two quite separate actions, the feasibility study, but also obviously the Napier Gisborne Rail Establishment Group may also be working on additional information and wish to bring it back, and you've indicated certainly that you want to hear more from them, so that I see that both these, if you like, aspects of the work would be working in parallel, well, moving in parallel, not necessarily working together, but moving in parallel, and would be trying to progress one or both of those. So that's really how it would happen.
The point I was making was the order of the minutes won't really make a lot of difference to signalling to anyone what it looks like going forward. That was the point I was making.
Maybe put it a little differently. The absence of
whether he was comfortable of it, but really it should read 21 as first and then participates in any feasibility study, because we don't know what the feasibility study is, but makes no change to the annual plan.
Councillor Belford's issue. Did you wish to speak any further, Councillor Belford, on?
I don't see how it does, but
Move them around.
I understand, but
because what
I could not give based on this. I don't know what I would say to McArdle if he stopped me on the street and said, "Is your feasibility study going to look at the cycleway? Is that seriously being examined? Are you putting any money into that? Or is it just a toss away? We're not going to put any money in it. We claim we're interested in how to best use this hugely important asset in the region, but we're not willing to spend any money to examine the issue. I don't get it.
Mr. Chair,
Could you we're in discussion. Do you wish to speak?
could you put the word S, studies, and then it clears
And it is one study. One study. Councillor Barker, you wish to speak next?
Well, I disagree with that. I thought the order we had it in reflected the stages in which the council made decisions. Our annual plan was this. The second one is we added something in there. But now it seems, if you read this, that we've done the thing around the wrong way. So I just want to say that. I don't think, I have to say to Tom, the order which resolutions are on these things doesn't reflect who's charged through the door first. It just says these are things we're doing. There's no priority on this, and I just think be over sensitive. But the other point I make about this is that I think by having both resolutions on, we're sending mixed messages with this. I prefer to have a clear statement of goal and pursue it. And if we're going to pursue the rail, well, let's do that. And be direct about it and say that's what we want to do until we find it don't work. And then come to option 2. Anybody reading this would say the regional council can't make up its mind whether it wants to support the rail or wants to support the cycleway or this or that or the other. They're confused. Sorry? No, I don't think that's a good place to be. And I just want to put a plug in for rail. All around the world, the US is refurbishing Amtrak, spending mega millions. They're building new railway lines in California. They're building railway lines all over China. Europe's putting in railway lines in. And they're doing this because they realise in the future diesel-powered machines are going to go. The Chinese realise that jets are going to go. They have to transport them by something which you can manage without carbon, electrified rail. Now, what they're doing is future-proofing themselves. I think the problem we've got here is we've got too narrow a focus. We're looking about the cost here and now and those things. So that's my perspective on it. I think we need to be looking further at it. But back to the other part of it, if we're going to have a narrow focus, let's pursue the goal vigorously with the best that we've got to see whether it can work. And I don't see that in this resolution at all. We're going to do something, and we've got words that will make people feel comfortable, but we're not pursuing it vigorously, as I would see it. And therefore, I will support the resolution, but I think it falls short of what we are capable of. I personally think we should have put our best resources onto it in HBRC, with the port and the expertise they've got, and said, can you make this work? And if they said yes, well, we've got a plan. If they say no, we know the answer. It seems to me now we've got a 3-stage process. We're going to do some more work around here, we'll have some more discussions, we'll talk to HBRC later, we'll do this, do that, and we'll be here mucking around on this thing for a lot longer period of time. I cannot understand why we have an investment company which we don't use to do the job we set them up for. This is exactly why we set them up, but we're not going to use them for it. So I'll surrender to all of that, if that's what council want, but I just want to make it clear to you that we have now a bifurcated plan which is confusing to anybody who looks on the outside. We're not pursuing a goal vigorously, we're pursuing 2 goals in a rather half-hearted way, and I don't think that's actually a good outcome. So if that's what we want, I'll support it.
Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, I think all of the confusion exists in Councillor Barker's mind.
No.
I'm quite clear on this. I would have preferred to have it the other way around, because it seems to me that we're not certain in our own minds that the railway idea is going to work. We need to see some pretty robust plans for it to work in the longer term. My concern about the rail is that, as one of the submitters said to us today, there was a 4 or 5 year period of planting, and that might result in a 5 to 10 year period of harvest, but what happens after that? So the question for me that remains unanswered is, in 10 or 15 years' time or 20 years' time, is that railway going to be feasible? Because what is it going to be carting if it's not going to be logs? And talking to some of the submitters during the lunch break, they were suggesting by then there will be other developments in Gisborne that will want to utilise the rail service. That's in the future. We don't know what they are going to be, so it's an act of faith at this point in time to say it's going to work. So for me to keep the option of an alternative use for the railway and investigate that by means of a feasibility study makes a lot of sense. So I'm in support of us keeping our powder dry and advancing this on more than one front. So I will support the motion.
Other speakers? Councillor Dick. No, I went. Why not? Is that the question? Yeah. With your...
There's further discussion with the rail people and perhaps others. When did you have in mind that this should happen? Before we adopt the annual plan or after?
This, I don't think that, I'd like to do it as soon as possible. I don't think it's necessarily related to the annual plan because we're going to have this resolution in the annual plan which says that the whole topic is still on the table. But I'd like to answer your question, Board. I'm really keen to have that discussion, and as soon as possible, the next month. We've got a very different. June's going to be tough. If other, I'm happy to do it outside council. I'd like to be able to invite some other people to meet those people. So I'll talk to you after about that, because if you're not going to do it around the council, I'm happy about that. We'll do it independently. But I want to personally know more about it.
Well, I think everyone is due to know more about it. I just asked that question because Neil Buchanan, the ex-Kiwi Rail guy, is going overseas on 28th of June, so yeah, you probably won't get him for a month or so after that. But that's not critical.
No further discussion?
Yes.
Oh, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'm happy to support that. I don't think the order makes any difference at all. And what it's doing, which is most critical, is keeping all options open for as long as possible. And I was taught very, very early in the piece that is a wise thing to do. Don't close off your options prematurely. The participation feasibility study on the best use of the rail corridor is simply that, best use, and that use will range from cycle trails in various permutations, with or without the track there, with or without tourist trains, and clearly the rail freight option and tourist trains as well. It's got to include all those things. I have a view that this thing is being put up politically to park the rail issue until after the election. And I don't think we're going to get much sense out of anyone prior to the election. And regardless of a change in government, which of course is doubtful, I have some confidence that we can get some sense out of this present government after the election. I hope I'm not disappointed in that regard. Oh, and the other thing I'd lastly say is there is another party that we can't refer to publicly here today who has a vital interest in this, and some discussions had been commenced with that party and should be progressed and reported to the council.
Mr. Summer?
No, I don't need to say any more, except I'm very pleased that Councillor Barker is going to support this. Thank you.
Well, let's test that. I'll put that to the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you.